I'm speaking to an amazing group of people from Singapore, management consultants. Are we out on a ledge? Do we jump? Are there opportunities like never before? What are we going to do? What is it like in the Singapore arena? What is it like working with local companies, overseas companies in that management space? I've got an amazing panel. Welcome to all of you. And also a welcome to Paul Loxton, my co-host. Thank you, Paul.
Well, thanks very much for, firstly, big shout out to you, Scotty, and your team for arranging this. Thank you very much indeed. Just to sort of give everybody a bit of context, Scotty and I liaise on projects from time to time, and we share an interest in understanding what makes businesses succeed and in working with small businesses, helping them grow. And we were talking about this and thought, well, hey, wouldn't it be great to, get some more views on this? And, so Scotty sort of came up with this panel discussion idea, which I thought was a wonderful idea. And that's where you folks came in. We thought it would be ideal if we could invite some business professionals like you, people who not only run their own businesses, but whose business focus is very much on supporting other businesses grow. So that's really where things came from. So I'm really here very much, I'm going to take very much a back seat. It's Scotty's show, it's your show. I'm really looking forward to the discussion. Obviously, if I've got anything to contribute, I'll do so. But, thanks very much for setting everything up, Scotty, and thank you very much, everybody, for coming along.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. So we're going to begin with Andrew, and let's begin with the question that's kind of, burning on everybody's lips at the moment. And that is, how has COVID-19 affected your business, both negatively and or positively? Andrew.
Well, let me begin with the negatives. There are two in particular. We run a regional operation, Asia Pacific wide. That's the Asian operation. And so with this lockdown, we can't travel. So we've got to figure out other ways of reaching out to our regional clients. And there has been, because of physical distancing, a number of postponements so far. Touch wood, there has not been any outright cancellations. There are three positives that I can share with panel members. One is that this lockdown or circuit breaker has given us time to rethink the business. And as a matter of fact, I am working on putting together a new way of running the business. And it's also part of, handing over to the next generation of folks who are going to continue with the business as well. So I'm going to be kind of killing two birds with one stone. Second positive is that it's forced us to think of new ways of delivering our service. Third is it's given me time, because I spent so much time on the road in the last nearly 40 years. It's given me time to sit back and begin the second edit of my third book. In fact, there's even a script of the fourth book that's in the works. So those are the positive and negatives, Scott.
Thank you, Andrew. I know this has been a time of reflection for all of us, and I want to hear more about the positives that you mentioned in terms of some of the opportunities. We're definitely going to get that later. But now, Andrew, how have you found, yes, it's great that you have the knowledge to write a book, your third book, so congratulations on that. You have that knowledge, but have you just, can I use the phrase, sat on your bum for the last month? I'm sure you haven't, and just written your book. Or have you still been able to be proactive in your business?
Well, the book actually has already been written in terms of the first edit. It's just that, I've been so busy flying around, working on projects, that I've not been able to go back and do a second edit. So the quick answer is, the short answer is that no, I've not been sitting on my bum. In terms of being proactive, the moment I got wind, I was actually in Australia up till about the middle of March. And I kind of sensed that things were getting bad. And so I began reaching out to non-traditional partners through some channels of mine. And we are at a stage where we are about to begin, a project that I won't discuss with these non-traditional partners who happen to be, the biggest in their field, and how we're going to bring some of our tools to collaborate with them so that they can better service their existing clients.
I like that idea of non-traditional partnerships. And I think that's something, it's quite a nice phrase, because I think that's something that's going to be happening more and more, is we're creating these partnerships with people we might not have expected to in the past. Let's move across to Lisa. Tell us about your business, Lisa. How is it being affected?
I think it's been the last probably 3 months. Things have been just as busy as always. So if I just looked at it from that pure numbers, et cetera, I'd say, well, not a lot. But then again, what I've actually done to ensure that happened is where things have really changed. And I think for myself, I've loved the fact that I can now go out and really embrace digital work. I mean, I think most of us, having been consultants for many years, we're used to being on the road. You know, we've had to work it out. We've had to learn how to use Zoom, how to effectively communicate via email or remotely in some way, shape or form. So working through Asia, I've found it really interesting that so many more companies and clients now are much happier with this whole remote situation, which I think is going to be amazing. It's going to change the way we do business as consultants, because ultimately it will become easier for us. We won't have to travel as much. The whole work from home, the whole talk to someone over a digital medium will really improve what we're doing, I think, moving forward. So from that side, it's been really exciting in my business. Yeah.
So Lisa, that's great. Now, the question for me is, it sounds like you are, and stop me if I'm wrong here, but it sounds like you've made the mental decision that working from home and working from remotely is pretty much going to happen in perpetuity. You don't think things are ever going to go back to normal. So you're happy to embrace that. Am I right in saying that?
Absolutely. And I must admit, I have utilised working from home as much as possible over the last few years. So for me, I was set up to do it. And I've always been an advocate when I work with big companies. The amount of pressure not to have remote employees is always high. They don't understand the benefits of it. But now they're being forced into a space and they've suddenly gone, wow, you're right. There's actually some good benefits here. And so I think that will change a lot. And for us consultants, it will make it much easier for us to do our jobs globally than even what it is today.
Well, that's great. And it's very encouraging to hear that you are still doing well, and you have almost, from the business perspective, barely even noticed the last couple of months and the change. And that's a very encouraging sign. Shweta, are you experiencing something similar?
Yes, actually, I would say that it's a mixed bag. There is a bit of both positive and negative. The downside is not being able to onboard new startups or new businesses, as the environment is not really ripe to start new relationships, right? I mean, we can all say, I mean, for existing relationships and ongoing, converting to a web series or webinars or Zoom calls is great. But to get started just on, so I think the new introductions is something which has taken a downside. However, I think the positive side is because I work in the health tech domain, most of the companies I consult with have shown impressive revenue growth. And in some cases, the user base has grown exponentially. So as an investor and as a consultant, these are great times to look at repivoting suitably to tap a higher share of business in the existing companies on our roster. So from that perspective, and also I totally agree to Lisa's point. I think, with existing, companies that we consult also, I think the whole thing of, every time going out there, meeting with them, that kind of limited the man hours of what you could do, and also this thing of, now it's sort of put us all on the same platform, whether you are in the company or outside, you're in the geography or not. It's sort of, it's been a great equalizer. So from that perspective, I definitely see this as a glass half full.
I love that term, great equalizer. And I kind of get the impression, and maybe because this is a Zoom discussion and you guys sort of gravitated to that, I've noticed that all three of you so far, Andrew, Lisa, and you, Shweta, have kind of taken to Zoom, and you almost kind of, let's be honest here, I've almost kind of got that, I told you so underlying mentality. It's like, listen, we can do this virtually. We don't have to be face to face. It is possible, but so many companies were resisting it. Shweta, am I right there? Are you feeling that, yes, it is possible to do this virtually?
Absolutely. In fact, I don't know if I can also, I was trying to read Lisa's thought process when she's been running a business for like quite a few years. Lisa, I'm relatively new to all of you. I've just started in January this year. So there's a lot to learn from you guys. But having been in the corporate for close to 2 decades, being a woman and, having all the other pressures, I think, working out of home was really looked down upon, which I think, again, that's why I use the word equalizer. Everyone is only looking at the output, no matter where you are, how messed up your living room is. You are only focusing on the output, and that to me is a great equalizer. And then, yeah, that's really where I firmly believe it's a glass half full, or probably even fuller.
That's a wonderful statement. I completely agree. And Andrew's looking at his book half full, so it's almost going to be done, and it's exciting times. And I agree with that. So tell us about you, John. How are you finding things?
Hi. Basically, Scott, I work with startups as well as SMEs in Singapore, mainly focusing on delivering technology solutions to the process or changing their process to an extent to adopt new systems in their organization. How I find it is, there is a change in mindset of decision makers among my clients. It used to be like nice to have. Now they are really looking into it's necessary to have it. Some of them have missed the boat earlier on. They were not prepared. So they are mostly into firefighting at this point of time. But at the same time, I am trying to help them to foster a visionary leadership within that organization itself. When you look into Singapore SME market, you can see a lot of old traditional work environment, 33 years, 35-year-old companies over there, but they haven't really adopted and adapted to the changes across the market. They were really going in a traditional model. The systems were not up to the mark. So they are having a challenge, and that opens a lot of opportunities. Currently, when I'm looking at the opportunities, there are a lot of problems. I'm closely tracking those problems and trying to solve them. At the same time, taking only a limited thing, it will be tempting to say yes to a lot of stuff. But I know that given the current situation, the productivity team, because we do have an in-house technology as well as a design team, mostly situated in India. There is a productivity issue in terms of the organization as a whole when people are working from home. It's entirely different when you compare Singapore as well as India. In India, people are not that much used to work from home. They don't have proper infrastructure and setup, power failures, network issues. But again, trying to cope up. And they are having a psychological effect on their productive, not just productive on their life itself. They are not able to balance the work and life at this point of time. This is something which I'm heard, not from everybody, but at least a few of them as having this issue. So that is basically impacting in a negative way to our delivery process. But I'm looking at it in a more optimistic way into the future as well, as because I'm sure that this is going to change. A new model is going to evolve in a CoStar.
Agreed. And I think that new model is very much a paradigm that's currently being setting. And you have brought up an important negative, and that is working from home is not for everybody, and especially in certain environments. And I'm interested to get your opinions going forward just now on how this is obviously starting to affect your clients. So we're starting with how this is affecting you. So let's move across to Alan. Maybe Alan, you can give us your thoughts.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me on. So APAC team, my company, we do actually outsource sales, and we're much more tactical. We actually carry our clients' cards and we sell on their behalf. So this new situation's kind of really thrown us for a loop in that in the past, we've done a lot of more centralized support, i.e. with professionals, say in Singapore or in other areas. And what we've started to do over the last month or so is really look to localize. So for example, maybe I'm the only one here, but I actually hired a guy a month ago in Malaysia. Because our feeling is this is going to be with us for much longer than probably many of us think. And so we basically feel like travel within the countries will be much more viable than between countries. So if we can put resources on the ground in our target markets, and we primarily cover the ASEAN area, we can then remotely train and support our people to then do what we need to do for our clients. So we're in the process of doing that. I'm looking for someone right now in Vietnam. On the client side, I had one client renegotiate, which is kind of a negative to be expected. My biggest client has been pretty solid. But I have a feeling as things go on, we can all expect there to be, certainly people saying, hey, maybe we should relook at this relationship. So for us, it's how do we be a bit more local so that we can provide that kind of tactical support. And that's a bit of a challenge. It's certainly a different cost metric and whatnot. But
well, this is a really good point. It's a very good point that you're making, and that now we can start to lend in quite nicely to some of the innovations that we're looking at changing. And interestingly, we've seen this in our company as well. We hear what you say, Alan. It's about going local, and it's strange because you kind of think with all this virtual world, you almost don't need to go local. But actually, because you can't fly anymore, it's having somebody at the grassroots level is actually quite a nice innovation to have for your company. And I'd like to get some other thoughts about that. But yes, as an innovation, hiring staff locally, especially in the Southeast Asia region, I think that is one definite innovation. Andrew, if we can get back to you and start talking about some of the innovations, I'd like to hear about innovations that you may or may not have in your own business, how you're thinking or reacting differently in your business. But I'd also like to hear any innovations that you've either consulted with your clients to take part in, or that your clients are doing of their own accord.
I think the biggest one that I have seen amongst clients at the moment is how do you reach the end user through sources and platforms and channels other than those you traditionally work with, because COVID-19 has brought with it, among other things, restrictions in movements. And therefore, when you talk about face-to-face contact, I do a lot of work in the social services sector, for example. There's only so much you can do, and therefore you've got to think of, how else to be able to serve that client. The other part of our business is that we work with, because we're a strategy house, and it's kind of difficult to bring a top management team together and deliberate on, a 200 million acquisition, for example, using a Zoom meeting. Yeah. So you have to look for new applications of the expertise and the tools that you have. And we've been able to find partners working in areas where we can bring some of our expertise and tools and collaborate with them. So new collaborations, having to tweak the tools that we have and create modules that will enhance their own value, and in the process helps to generate, more inflow of work for us. These are the principal innovations that we've been able to bring to bear, over and above the fact that, like all of you, we have been forced to learn new technologies very, very quickly.
So yes, there's certainly the technological innovation that's sort of been forced upon us, or like some of us, we've been doing it anyway. But it's interesting, and you make a very interesting point, because you do. It's like, how do you handle a $200 million, merger and acquisition, via Zoom? It's going to be interesting to see how those big deals get closed using this manner, and especially as security becomes more and more important. But yes, the technological side, absolutely. Lisa, have you noticed any, perhaps not necessarily from a technological side, but innovations in terms of just the way people are thinking? Maybe it could be an innovation in the way that they think as a business, the way they run their board meetings, the way they operate, or even the way that they've decided to pivot into a different market.
I think that's been a big part of the innovations I've noticed, is people are looking for that pivot opportunity. And sometimes it's what you could almost call an internal one, where they look at their staff and for the first time ever, they're going, you know what, we're going to trust these people to work remotely. So what tools do they need? And they're getting serious about giving them the right tools. So yes, they have to learn the technology, but then they've really looked at how do we use those tools? And that's the really important part that I'm seeing a lot of clients and businesses have to focus on, is that you can't use Zoom for micromanagement. If you do, it's probably even worse than doing a face-to-face. So, you've got to be really careful. You keep checking in with your employees that way, you're going to lose them really quickly. So they've had to change it around and go, you know what, it's okay to include some social action and function inside a work meeting, because we're in a virtual environment now and people are craving human connection. So that's where I'm finding a lot of businesses and senior managers are having to make that mental mind shift and say, you know what, it's okay to have a bit of banter. It's okay to have the first 10 to 15 minutes of the meeting, people going around the room and talking about their weekend or how hard it was to juggle homeschooling 3 kids and work, you know, and they're actually embracing that, which I think is a really positive thing, both for mental health, but also for human interaction in the workplace, no matter what that looks like in the next few years. That's going to really change the dynamic and bring it back to positive people leadership again, which we really need right now.
Yeah, positive people leadership. That's absolutely, it's a great term. And this don't micromanage on Zoom. I think that's an excellent point because yeah, it is. I mean, nobody likes to be, okay, well, I need to see you on Zoom in 5 minutes. You know, sometimes it has to be done. You've got to get pulled into a meeting, but maybe there's also a bit of a shift that people have got to take as well. And maybe you should be Zoom ready, or you have to be able to get Zoom ready in a very short period of time. So maybe these are some of the things we all have to look at and decide on. But yeah, very, very good point. So Shweta, what about your side? You probably work, if you're in the healthcare sector, with some pretty innovative companies, but at the same time, they probably feel that, well, my company's not going to change very much because I'm in the right industry. How have you felt about that?
No, I think, you know, I think it's a very good and very strong realization amongst companies that this is the new normal. You know, this whole, and COVID-19 has created an environment of social isolation, and organizations are also looking to improve the engagement of their employees, you know, via webinars. So this is one of the things that I feel that there's a difference and you know, opportunity for consultants like us to also contribute and expand our business. So, you know, I've started offering online workshops to brand teams on innovation championship and brand guidance. You know, to Andre's point, for example, of forming non-traditional partnerships. This is one where, you know, you expand what you were doing anyways. And, you know, traditionally I would be taking large scale 3 to 5 day long workshops for capability building within large organizations on innovation and brand guidance, but now it can be done on webinar. And like somebody said that, you know, employee engagement, everybody is trying to keep people engaged and in this time, you know, I know people at Facebook, they're getting $1,000 allowance every month. It's kind of, it's being called a hardship allowance, just to sort of cope with work at home, etc. So I think those are some of the opportunities for us. The other thing that we have embarked upon in my company is training enablement for medical reps, you know, in companies like Abbott, which spend millions of dollars in just doing training, you know, where they actually, you know, assemble like hundreds and actually thousands of medical reps every quarterly. And all they go through is, you know, the write-up that they have for the doctors, which is frankly, it is such a waste of time and resources. So this sort of an environment is a great enabler to bring all of those trainings online and to be able to do them much more cost effectively, time effectively, and also give a one-on-one sort of solution. So I feel that the companies have recognized there are areas which will see a blip. So post the COVID-19, a lot of these will go, but a lot of, you know, trainings like these or employee enrichment, you know, which people have clearly identified that, you know, there are better ways and more efficient ways of doing it. They're here to stay. And therefore, this is a great time to kind of make inroads into those territories and be sort of, you know, an early starter or, you know, the first mover in that space and entrench yourself.
I'm hearing, and maybe you guys are just not quite comfortable enough in the session to really let loose, but I'm hearing quite a lot of positive here. I mean, you know, what I'm listening to is, you know, you can have the same discussion, and I've done so with different groups, and it's a very, very different sentiment that's coming out. But what I'm hearing is good. I know, John, we've all brought up some negatives, and you've mentioned, for example, you know, and I'm going back to that, you know, don't micromanage over Zoom. But what are you putting in place then to start, and what are you seeing other your clients or other members of the industry? What are they putting in place to try and micromanage clients? Any solutions for that?
We don't look into Zoom as a micromanagement tool. Rather, we look it as a collaboration tool. So maybe a slight shift in the mindset. It's okay. Micromanagement, there are a lot of things. We are trying to mobilize different stakeholders within the organization at this point of time. Let me give you two different examples. One on a music school. Since schools or this enrichment classes were the first one to go under lockdown, even before the market was closed. What we have developed is a mobile application wherein students can interact with the coaches based on the lesson types they have already subscribed to. Coaches can give an assignment on a weekly basis. Students can respond to that. They get the ratings online and stuff. So they are building a new model over there. And what they found is that even the market opens, they are thinking of taking it forward, because as they said, in a year's time during the vacation, a lot of students are coming and joining the classes. But beyond that, once the classes, the conventional school opens, they drops out. They will come. So they are looking at this tool as a regular engagement, and which they are looking very positively to the future. Another thing is in the SME side, it's an security agencies who manage all these security officers and send them to different locations to manage. So we came up with a tablet application wherein you can put this tablet as a kiosk at the centers wherever the security officers is required. Rather than putting 5 or 6 officers at this place due to this COVID situation, they just keep the tablet and they can directly interact with an officer through a call, like a real-time communication tool. It's very similar to Zoom, but this is a very kind of a proprietary thing for that particular firm. And how they
That's a good point.
They are changing the process, how they are operating. Even these security officers are getting empowered. Rather than sitting at one location, they are basically taking care of an area at a particular in Singapore. So when the call appears, if it requires some kind of immediate attention, they will attend to that issue at that particular thing. This is the kind of mobilization happening in the space.
I'm liking this, and I'm liking the innovation, but also what I think you've made a very good point is that right now, I wish I had shares in Zoom. I mean, goodness gracious, don't we all? Maybe some of you guys are smiling because secretly you know what you did. But Zoom, we always talk Zoom, and we maybe talk a little bit about Skype or a few others. But I think we need to be prepared for a model, quite rightly, as you said, John, where Zoom isn't the best forum for everything. You're gonna get a lot of other products, and I think this is something that as consultants we can all look at, because we can look at the horses for courses and find the right industry tool or the problem or the challenge, and find the right tool for that. So I don't think Zoom is going to be the only thing in the world. I think there's going to be many others. And Paul often also says, and I wanted to mention from a Singapore perspective, is that generally the Singapore hierarchy can be quite high. And Paul Loxton mentioned this in his article. He always talks about how you've got to start junior, and there's a kind of way up the kind of channel, and eventually you kind of get to the CEO. But he talks about how important it is to reach that CEO at the start, but it's difficult because there's quite a structure. I'm interested to know how flexible that corporate structure is going to become, and is it going to be easier for consultants to start to actually get to those people? Alan, how are you feeling about that?
I think you bring up a great point, Scott. I kind of look at it a little bit of short-term wariness, medium-term very, very bullish, very positive. Short-term, look, all of our clients are freaking out. They're all worried about their cash flow, the cash position, all of that. And that may lead some of them to look at cutting costs. And as an expense versus, say, an employee, it's much easier to whack on us than it is to maybe lay off some of their workforce. So short term, we're kind of white knuckling it a little bit with our clients. But medium term, I think there's going to be great opportunity, especially for companies like APAC Team, in that, hey, there's going to be expat sales guys that just aren't coming back. They may not be able to get back. And I think companies are going to have to rethink, how do they provision these types of services? And we've been banging on this kind of B2B sales, surrogate sales, if you will, kind of model. And quite frankly, running into, a lot of old school thinking, saying, we could never outsource that, or how would that work? Or, and now actually we're seeing a huge uptick in interest. people saying, yeah, how would that work? You know, I need help now. You know, my guys, I brought most of my people back to my home country. Now things are happening in Asia or happening in Southeast Asia, and I need support. And I think people like us that are, you know, geographically present, are staffed and ready to help, are in a very, very good position. So I have a feeling 6 months from now, we could have this call again, and we might all be feeling.
Yeah, well, it's already
better.
great. It's already great. And, you know, this mind shift is happening, and I think it's going to take some people longer than others. And I'm actually going to go diagonal now and just quickly ask Lisa a little bit on this question, because, you know, what needs to happen in a corporation over the next 6 months to change that mindset from traditional to, I actually don't really like the term new normal, but I think it's going to stick. But how do you change from the current mindset of quite steep traditionalism to this new normal?
I think it's a really interesting one, and it's got almost two dynamics in Asia, because Asia, that older mindset is very traditional from a cultural point of view. Outside of Asia, the people have sort of dropped that off a fair bit, and they've moved to different areas. And I'll give you an example. For instance, one of the businesses I worked with a couple of years ago, one of the staff that would be reporting to me for a few months was a very young intern, and he was male, and he saw this Western lady come in. He spoke very little English. He was terrified of me. But not only that, my title at the time was VP, so he was even more terrified of me. And all I needed this poor guy to do was answer a question occasionally. It wasn't a great deal, but he would almost hide under his table when he saw me walking out. And I wasn't asking him anything hard. It would be, oh, when is the delivery going to come? Or did this get processed? It was very, very simple. But because that cultural stigma is still there, that I was very senior, I'd walked in to do an important job, he was very junior, he looked through, was terrified. Happily, within a few months of working with me, he realised that I wasn't going to eat him or fire him or anything else. And he actually became really sociable and was a really nice intern. He was great. But just that sheer terror those first few weeks was amazing to see. And I think that's very ingrained culturally. So that's going to be a second thing that has to be shifted, apart from just the general, let's open up our perspective, embrace our people a bit more and look at new ways of leadership and doing things. So we've got two challenges in Asia that maybe other countries don't have quite as strongly. In saying that, the companies that I'm seeing moving forward, they really are looking at that people-centered leadership model. And that actually answers a lot of the difficult questions right now, because yes, companies are stressed. They're worried about cash flow. Of course they are. This is going to be a natural thing for quite some time. But it comes back to the internal culture and the ability to embrace your people no matter how hard the situation is, no matter how honest you have to be, even though maybe you don't want to be, and no matter how many difficult situations you're going to have to deliver. But to be honest, embrace them, let them raise their voice, and actually truly listen, I think will be a big part of that shift. And we now have the technology tools for people to do that. You know, they can jump on their WhatsApp and join a group in a company and voice their opinion and get heard, because the leaders don't have any other option right now. They have to go through that and read it. So that's going to be a big shift, I think.
Wow. Yeah, you've made some really important points. And I think we, you know, for us, the shift has been relatively easy, but it's not going to be, you know, easy for everyone. And Andrew, you know, I'd like to hear from you. And in no way am I calling you old. In no way am I calling you old. I would like to know from you, you mentioned the big deals, not me, that you work on. There's a lot of these kind of big deals. So I want to talk about in that kind of that corporate structure on the top level, you know, you know, at the kind of C-suite level. Do you think that the kind of big deals are going to stop becoming, how can I phrase this question? I'm looking for the mindset. Do you think the same methodology that was used to make those big C-suite decisions is going to be maintained? Or do you think, are they going to fight to maintain it and keep that traditionalism? Or do you think that over the coming months and years, you are going to see a shift in the way C-suite executives actually do business and communicate?
I think you would be hard put to come up with a one-size-fit-all answer, because when one talks about the C-suite, there are many different types of organizations out there. I can only speak from, you know, our own experience. We work with the larger firms, whether they are family businesses or whether they are, you know, government-linked companies or whether they're multinationals. You know, we work with the the larger players by and large, because, you know, we focus on transformational strategy. So if we restrict our discussion, in my case, to just these categories of organizations, today's Business Times has a lead article. There are two big articles in today's Business Times, the Singapore Business Times. These, by and large, well-run organizations are already out there looking for opportunities, as a matter of fact, especially those who, you know, have been building up a war chest, and they have got all their what-ifs in place. So you're not going to see very much difference in terms of how the deals are going to make in terms of the considerations. Now, I can't speak about the people part of it, because that's not my area of focus. We work primarily with the top team to figure out basically directions, business models, you know, strategies and the like. So when one talks about consideration, of course, the criteria are going to be largely predicated on how is this going to enable us to continue to be supreme in our chosen area, in our chosen sandbox, for example. How is this going to take us, you know, to the next level? How is this going to future-proof, if you will, the business? And those are going to be key questions that they're going to be asking more than anything else.
And I think it's important that those questions get asked, but also the way they get answered and the way they get implemented all the way to the grassroots, as Lisa said, because, you know, there's definitely a shift happening, and we can't say that everybody's going to take that shift easily. You know, maybe we can jump onto you now, Shweta, and you can also, you know, answer one of the questions. You know, if you were to, based on what you've learned, your experience over the last couple of months and your personal predictions of the future, you know, if you were to give two pieces of advice right now to other either management consulting companies or just general companies out there, you know, looking to do business in Singapore, what would they be?
Sure. I think, you know, the two pieces of advice is, I would say, I heard you say that, you know, of course, there's a downturn and there is a bit of optimism. That's probably because I've just started out and, you know, my business is still in the growth stage for whatever I can offer. But I think there is definitely, like I said, onboarding new companies is a problem. And, you know, so the downturns like these is a great time for, number one, strengthening your core, and number two, strengthening your connections. So, you know, so I think, you know, to Andrew's point, he's writing a book, but not everybody can. But still, I think the important point to strengthen your core is build upon your foundational capabilities. For example, if you are an innovation consultant like myself, you know, use this time to build a model based on your practice and learnings, write articles, share your work. I mean, there's never been a better time. There's never going to be a better time. Learn voraciously, expand your horizons to other categories and domains like finance, financial markets. You know, even if you're not a financial consultant, you cannot be a consultant and say, hey, I don't, you know, I'm not well versed with it. You have to be. That is something that you need to know. So that, I think, you know, that is important. And the second point, like I said, strengthen your connections. There has never been a better time. People are empathetic. Like I said, this has been a great equalizer for people of all life stages and seniority. I understand that, you know, there will be C-suite, at least there is a short-term shift in C-suite in that they have the time, at least they're available on LinkedIn, and they are amenable to new connections and new ideas. So, yeah, so strengthen your core and strengthen your connections. Those are my 2 cents.
Absolutely. And if you have a look at, this is key why we're putting this panel discussions together. This is why I do what I do, so that these conversations can happen in the right format. We get to know each other. Not only do we add value to other people that will be listening to this in the future, but we're actually getting together now as a group of people, and we're saying, okay, how can we potentially work together? It's you know what it is? It's old-fashioned networking in a way. And it is strengthening those connections. And, you know, I'd like to hear a little bit more from Paul just now when he talks about those connections and the importance right now, especially at a time like now when is it difficult to onboard? I know you're difficult to onboard new customers. Yes and no. We've had Lisa who's doing pretty well at the moment. So let's look at that as well. And I'd like to kind of finish off on that particular topic. But let's jump to John then. I mean, John, what advice would you give to other companies right now?
Well, choose the projects wisely. That's one of, there are a sudden influx of a lot of inquiries coming up because everybody know that the new normal is not as they expect. They don't know what is going to come up. So a lot of things are going to come up, and at the same time there is a budget crunch also over there. So people are going to negotiate a lot rather than saying yes to a lot of stuff. Just choose it wisely. Secondly is about collaboration rather than competition among the consultants itself. Or there could be, as Andrew have mentioned, he's looking into some out of the box collaborations or partnerships. There is a lot of room in that. So the models are going to shift in the future, definitely. So we need to really handhold these visionary entrepreneurs to take a look at what are the tools they could use, what are the systems they can implement to better be prepared. And as the markets are going to reopen, people will definitely have a new kind of a psychographics of how they behave. The behavior is going to change as a whole. And just to quote how the Darwin's evolution theory, it basically states that isolated small population size under high evolutionary pressure, we are going to evolve. So
yeah.
yes.
Wow, I like that. And that's a nice way of looking at it, John. Once again, hugely positive attitude, which I like. I think that's amazing. And once again, you make some important points. And one point I want to absolutely emphasize again, so important, is that we might see an increase in inquiries in terms of our businesses, more and more people wanting to hear what we have to say. But whereas before, they might only come to us or potentially one other company they found, maybe it's a referral. Now they could be sending out inquiries to 10, 15, 20 different companies at once. So you're right, you might be inundated or getting a lot of inquiries, but what is the quality of those inquiries? And again, I'd love to get some feedback from Paul on that as well, in terms of, that's a really, really good point, John. We've noticed a lot more inquiries, but a lot of work involved in getting those inquiries, because they're looking in so many different directions right now. They're really broadening their horizons in that respect. Ellen, how are you finding things at the moment in terms of onboarding, and also what kind of advice would you give to companies right now?
Yeah, I think the biggest one for us, and I don't think this is hugely revolutionary, but I call it extreme flexibility. I think we just have to think, for example, we have seen an uptick in inquiries because I think we're uniquely placed to be able to help companies that may have a shortage of feet on the street, so to speak, right now. And but then again, in some cases, the business models might need to be changed in terms of how much cash, how much we can get in a retainer versus structuring deals differently. Even within APAC team, I've had kind of an on-the-shelf sales training program based on my book, Question, Shut Up, and Sell, that I've never really done much with. It's just been something we've offered to clients as kind of a freebie. We'll mentor and train your team. Now we're thinking, wow, maybe we should try to monetize that and turn it into something. And then like today, I jumped on this mainly because I really want to see how this works, right? And I want to see the end product. And I did set up a YouTube channel a while back in support of my book, and spent copious amount giving tips. And when I thought of something like this, I thought, based on that experience, I better jump on with people like you, Scott, to know what you're doing. But I just right now I feel like I have, and hopefully.
Sorry, Ellen, I'm going to have to cut you off a little bit there because we're losing your connection a little bit. So, but we certainly got the gist of it, especially when you talk about get out there, a couple of YouTube video clips. Even if you don't want to make your own YouTube channel, just participating in panels like this, it puts you into a forum and creates a framework for other people to get to know you, and that's. Absolutely, we totally agree with that. And yes, that's where we're here to help with these sort of discussions. Lisa, what are your two pieces of advice?
I think the most important one, very similar to what Andrew mentioned earlier in the conversation, was really look at other avenues. Look outside the box you're used to living in. Look at potential partnerships, JVs, discussions with companies that you wouldn't normally see as a target, But when you think about it, they might be doing things that you can run parallel with and support them. So I think that's really important. And a lot of new business will evolve this way. You know, I've had some really weird and wonderful calls to review documents I wouldn't normally get involved in, but it's simply because people have known me for years and they trust me. They know that I already know the financial standing of their business, but they suddenly don't have a contact in Beijing they can talk to.
Wow.
So they're going through a Chinese English translation. It's big documents and lots of money. They say, look, can you please read it and then do a short bullet point about what it really means? And it's because I've got the relationship across the borders that they go, okay, if Lisa's read it, she probably can actually translate it. And I am by no means a translator. So it's an unusual business step for me, but it's working at the moment and it's helping people. So it can be totally left field.
Oh, that's wonderful. But you've got to be open to those that left field business coming at you. But that's actually a really wonderful story. But what's beautiful about that story, Lisa, is it came from a position of trust, where they trust you because you already know about their business, where they're standing. So they've come to you. Yeah. You might not be the best person suited to that job, but you certainly are confident and you certainly are competent, and there's a trust element. And I think the development of that trust within your community right now is so important. And that's something I talk a lot about. Is right now there's no better time to get people to trust you, to get you to see them to see you as a credible industry expert, specialist, or who you are. We've all got our faces on. People can see us. They can see us talking. They can see us right now. They can hear our voices. They can hear us speak. And we have an audience that's listening. So for the first time, we can really start to get out there without leaving our homes, but we can build that credibility and we can build that trust. And Andrew, I haven't forgotten you. I still would like to hear your 2 pieces of advice, if I may.
Well, yes, thank you, Scott. Well, I'm going to play my age card again. You know, I have been in this business since 1981, first in Singapore, then in Asia Pacific. And I have lived through the 85 recession. I've lived through the financial crisis of 97 and the Lehman crisis of 2008. And there are two lessons that are permanently etched in my head and in my psyche and my being. And one is whether you're talking about good times or bad times, there are always companies doing well, and there are always companies struggling, whatever the business cycle. So even in the worst of times like this, there are businesses doing well. And related to that, therefore, is the need for us to look at, the makeup of our clientele. And I learned from the 85 recession that you should never put all your eggs into one basket. And so I've got, very diversified clients. Geographically, I started expanding after 85 and went Asia Pacific wide, because I've learned that whatever the economic cycle, there will be pockets of, the arena that is doing well enough to sustain you and strengthen you, for the next uptick. And like all of you have done, which I'll encourage all of us to do, is to continue to be open. For example, I was approached about a month or so ago by speaking the largest online speakers bureau in India to do a recording of a video. So I said, sure. And then another opportunity came on and I said, sure, it will only take me half an hour to write a script and, do a recording, send it in, get it edited. So when I received the email from Scott, I say, oh, sure. I spoke to my wife about it and she said, yeah, there's nothing to lose. Why don't you go and just share your, 2 cents worth? And I say, okay, let me do that. So it's amazing. It opens up new avenues. I've now met, 6 wonderful people who are very knowledgeable in different fields. And yeah, as Scott mentioned, there might be opportunities for collaboration after this.
That's wonderful, Andrew. And what I love about your story, and I've been very blessed in that I've managed to interview and spend time with some very, very senior people across completely different industries, and not even business, martial arts, for example. Mm-hmm. And what amazes me is and again, not calling you old, but the wiser and the more experienced advice is always the simplest. We did, you know, and it's incredible. I mean, going back to basics, it's like you say, you know, don't put all your eggs in one basket. There's good companies and there's bad companies. You know, some companies do well, some are not. Follow the path. Be open to new ideas. I mean, the advice that you've given us there, Andrew, is so profound and amazing. And at the same time, so simple, and it's hugely appreciated. And the advice that all of you guys are giving me, and the people who are going to listen to this is fantastic. And as I go into the last question, which I'd like you to all answer, possibly a little bit shorter in your answers this time. Just give us a quick little, you know, what your answer is, and that is going to be a question specifically around potential new markets, and what new markets do you see that have evolved. But before I do that, I wouldn't mind Paul just to step in, and before we go into that last question, and just to get a bit of insight, because you've mentioned a few very interesting points about, you know, things like building relationships, who to speak to, the way the corporate structure is. Paul, what's your kind of take? I know you've been very quietly and diligently listening there. What's your take on the current situation for consultants in Singapore?
I think that this belief that we're going to go back to what existed before is an incorrect belief. And I, you know, listening to what everybody or a number of people have said so far, I think that is a fairly shared view here. I think we've already created, haven't we, the new norm to a large degree. And you know, this new norm seems, from what everybody's saying, to be working pretty well. Doors are opening, new relationships are being built, new opportunities are coming along, and as Andrew said, some companies will take advantage of them and some won't, but that's the case in any market conditions. So my sense is that we have created the new norm, and it's really, you know, how far and how fast we go from here using the technology that frankly has been around for a long time. You know, I've been a big advocate of video conferencing, as you have, Scotty, for a long time, but how many companies really use it effectively? Very, very few. Well, after this, how many will use it effectively? Basically everybody is going to use it effectively. Yeah. So you know, my sense is that we, in a very short space of time, less than a couple of months, we've created the new norm. This is probably some kind of a transition to where we're going to get to ultimately, isn't it? But I don't think we're going to be returning to where we were before. Yeah, I don't see that at all. I think there's a lot of exciting stuff going on, and you know, I've been making some notes as you guys have been talking, and I have not got a negative comment here. I haven't heard anybody
Absolutely.
Yeah, saying, well, you know, this is causing me grief, or this is, you know, it's all about using your initiative, trying new things, making new contacts, collaborating, etc., etc. So, you know, I think it certainly is a very positive message that's coming across from everybody.
Hugely, and that's what I love. We definitely, it's using the innovation, it's using, you know, that knowledge that we have to create something better. So Paul, let me start with you then in the question that I asked before. Actually, I'm going to start, and I'm also going to go out on a bit of a limb. The question to you guys is, you know, where do you see potential markets, but possibly even overseas markets or industries of opportunity? And to give an example, you know, I could mention a lot, but I'm going to mention one, and I actually think that the up market or the higher level of travel is actually going to be something to take a look at. I totally understand that the bottom has fallen out of much of the travel market at the moment, and it will take a very, very long time to travel to continue. But you're going to find that the upper echelons of business, the rich, the politicians of the world, they're going to still travel. They're going to need nice hotels. That kind of upper echelon of travel, I personally believe that could be a possible market. Don't worry, you guys don't need to critique my observation there, but I would like to hear your observations. Do you guys know of an industry, or can think of something that you feel is going to go, wow, that's actually something we should take a look at? And you're not allowed to say video conferencing. Okay, let's just, everyone knows that. All right. So Paul, we've been chatting with you before, so maybe carry on there. What do you think is
Okay.
is an opportunity worth looking at?
Well, everybody has got additional time on their hands now as a result of not traveling. You know, add that up. How much time did you spend, even in Singapore? Singapore's an easy environment to travel and to work in. Most probably people travel no more than about 35 minutes to work, and many even less. But even that gives you an hour a day. So what are people going to do with that? So I think an area that is a big growth area is providing people with non-work interests that's going to stimulate them, whether that's something they do online or whether it's something they learn or whether they go somewhere to do it. I think that is an area of opportunity. That time didn't exist before, it does now. And, you know, I think everybody has got that time. I think there's big opportunities there.
Yeah, I like that. And it's something that I personally believe very strongly in, because I'm a big believer in if you've got excess money to spend, don't buy another pair of jeans, shoes or whatever. You've already got so many. You know, spend that money on another human being who might be able to teach you something, and that money goes directly to them and you're supporting the community. So that's also something that I've really been resonated with, and I like that idea, Paul. You know, spend money on self-development or something, even if not for you, for the people around you. That's a really, really good one. Let's go to Shweta. What do you think, Shweta?
Actually, Scott, I completely agree with you. In fact, I would just add a little bit of layer to the tourism. You know, there was one of these companies that I was, looking at, before COVID came along. But, since we've really thought about how we actually transform, into a smaller segment in there, which is health tourism. This is not medical tourism I'm talking about, it's health tourism. As to why people, people like us, when we take vacations, we actually come back very exhausted. Of course, a lot of us, if you're in martial arts, I'm not really talking about people like yourselves. They're probably a very small fraction. So health tourism really, it's like, your getaway into, your getaway to come back healthier through experiences of yoga, Tai Chi, all of that. I think that is a very interesting market to look at. For me, it's very interesting because it's kind of an adjacency to health tech. Is what I look at. It's kind of marrying health tech into tourism. So that is something that I really feel, one should look at.
I love that idea. And I love it especially because it goes so nicely with the consultative approach. So you're working with healthcare companies and they're looking at well, hopefully now they're thinking about the world differently. And they're far more open to saying, well, okay, well, how do we take what we're doing now and transform it into something else? And the concept of health holiday almost, that's great. I think it could work really well. Not only that, but you could take it up a notch. In South Africa, for example, plastic surgery is quite cheap. So I've heard. So you get people that actually go from people all over. Do you think this face is natural? No, it really is. So we have a situation where you have people flying to South Africa because plastic surgery is cheap and go on a safari, but it's perhaps that's not really a health holiday, but you could go potentially to other parts of your country, possibly even international as it picks up, and actually get operations done potentially. Why do we have to think local anymore? So maybe there's opportunities around that. And yes, yoga, you could go away to learn things from a health perspective. I love it. John, what's your market of choice?
Okay, my point would be like, okay, bringing an inclusive technology or system for heavy industries like construction. I have been talking to a couple of companies in Singapore, and they really need something wherein they can include all the blue collar workers within the technology sphere itself. Currently, the systems only support up to a level of middle management or maybe a supervisory level, and blue collar people are not really getting any benefit, and it's going to be very difficult for them to engage these people even when the market is going to open. We have a couple of solutions being discussed with those people, but what I find is that for consultants there is a huge market over there because they themselves don't know how to implement such kind of a system into the process. They are having a very difficult time at this point of time to envision how it will roll out. So that is one of the opportunity which I would like to share with somebody who is really. I work with a couple of safety consultants, so they are having a really hard time to implement this kind of solutions.
Well, again, interesting. Construction, which is traditionally, I mean, it's crashed at the moment. I don't for one moment think the world is going to stop building after this. So it's got to be an industry that's there and finding solutions. So that's a good industry and a good market to look at. Ellen.
Yeah, one area that I'm watching is esports and sporting events that are being recorded. There was recently a U.S. A fighting match last weekend, so we're kind of starved for that live entertainment. And while esports is fake, it's competition, so it's definitely something that I'm paying attention to myself as a sport nut.
So what do you mean esports is fake? What do you mean by esports? Electronic?
Well, I mean in terms of the competition's real, but in terms of, so I mean, I guess there's two layers. One is the real competition that's in the empty stadiums that's being broadcast, but esports in terms of the gaming aspect of the
so you're watching the
video
Fortnite,
gaming.
Fortnite World
right.
Cup and all that. Yes. Okay. Now I'm getting it. Okay.
And it's been around for a long time, but not many people, only a certain segment has been kind of that focused on it. But given the lack of competition right now, I think
Ellen, I completely agree. I think it's going to be massive. I think it's going to be huge. I mean, people are going to be watching top video gamers play each other. And I think you're right. I think that's a huge market to watch. Lisa?
I think it's going to be an interesting opportunity over the next several months, if not years. People are suddenly much more focused on their health. They've had no choice. There's a lot of different theories about what could cure you right now, what could make things better, what you could do to make yourself safer. So I think at the moment, anything health-related, health products, are suddenly much more wanted. So looking into that space, e-commerce health products, I think are going to be a very big uptake. I'm seeing it more and more in Singapore at the moment. People are looking for health cures. They're also looking for things like, as they mentioned, the e-entertainment, but more in terms of exercise routines. So that whole health package that can be done, whether it be ordering products, whether it be getting diagnoses, whether it be doing a DNA test kit, whether it be downloading an exercise routine that you're happy with that fits your body type. I think that market is expanding very, very rapidly right now.
Yes, agreed. And I think it's also not just about the exercise that needs to take place, but the actual motivation to do the exercise, because it's very, very easy to do absolutely nothing while you're at home. When you have to go to gym at a certain time and it's in your diary and your personal trainer or your friend is there and you meet people, you kind of have that discipline. Now we're at home, we've got to create that new discipline. And I think we need an app to get you to actually load the exercise app.
Yep, to remind you.
Yeah, I think you agreed. So from a health perspective, I think that's very much so. And then finally, Andrew.
Well, there are three broad areas that I think will present immense opportunities. I'll use the word self. Anything that you add after that, and I think a number of you alluded to it or mentioned specifics, such as self-help, self-development. So whatever you want to learn. A good example is my wife, and she has become an expert in baking sourdough in the last 1 month. She must have watched 200 different videos from all over the world and experimented. And if you have tried going out to buy all this baking stuff in the last 1 month in Singapore, in the last few days, everything is out of stock. And I think she's contributed to that. So anything that is self that you put after that, I think there are going to be a lot of opportunities because people have more time on their hands. Paul mentioned, an additional hour a day we save from commuting. I think also because we have become a lot better looking for things online. I have to admit, I'm one of those who are so used to picking up the phone and telling my PA, do this for me, do that for me. And I kind of feel bad staying at home to, just call her at home. So I got to start looking for things on my own. And I've become quite good in searching for things online, but I sometimes run out of patience. So I think the next big area for me would be the people who are able to aggregate things for us so that the search becomes even easier, whatever that we may want to pursue. The third area, because of the fact that travel is going to be restricted, I think if we can help our clients in the localization area, whether it's localization of supply chain, Alan talked about localizing of your B2B sales model, for example, which I think, you're hitting a real sweet spot given current times and going forward. So the whole localization area is going to offer immense opportunities depending on which area of business you are in. So those are three kind of big picture take that I have in terms of where opportunities are going to be found.
Excellent. Well, anyone listening to this should be feeling pretty good right now, because there's certainly a huge amount that's happening. And once again, very positive, and thank you all for that positivity. I think it's really exciting where we're going to take this process in the future, and where consultants can go. We could talk for hours about how to consult, the future of consulting, how's it going to be done, what technology, techniques should we be using, what's new, what's not new. We'll have to save that for another time. So just to finish off, guys, I really appreciate your time. It's been absolutely wonderful. Just jump in. Anything else you want to say? Anything else you guys want to mention?
I just wanted to just add to the last point in terms of a different segment. I know the question is very specific as to what is it that you will work or do differently, which is why I mentioned health tourism. But I think it's an important forum to mention that I work in health tech, and telemedicine has really, it's kind of seen an exponential growth. So I don't think the discussion would be complete without mentioning that. So I just thought I will, just say that I think there was this whole, of course, just like any other technology, like Zoom meetings, telemedicine has existed for at least 10 years now. But, the adoption, there was so much of, people want to see their doctor. They want to go out there and meet them, all right? Now, this COVID-19, if anything, that has done for this is, it has changed that. We are comfortable sitting in the confines of our home, consulting with our doctors. The doctors are comfortable consulting the doctors online. And this can be a great opportunity for, the warped patient to doctor ratio in poorer countries, and in Asia. So I really thought that, I wanted to mention that. That's one area that has picked up, and we're working a lot in that direction as well.
That's a very good point. And yes, another opportunity. And again, we're starting to see these cross-border potentials. And I'm going to coin a phrase today, if I may be so bold. It's called an "I told you so" industry. And I told you so industry is an industry that's been trying for a long time, and telemedicine is one of them, because I had a client in the UK that did exactly that, and they were beating their heads to try and get telemedicine out there. They've been going for years and years and years. Now everybody's doing it because they're forced to. It's a classic "I told you so" industry, which is really, really interesting. So thank you for that, Shweta. Who else would like to jump in? Just any piece of advice, any comment?
I think it might have already been mentioned slightly, but I think the connections, create more connections where you can. If you've got spare time and you're not doing the self-learning or something else, try and jump on your LinkedIn or whatever your medium of choice happens to be. Reach out, talk to people, generate those connections, because there's so many new industries that will spring up as part of this. And we might not be able to think of them right now, but the more you talk to other people who are in different areas, things start to happen. And you'll start to see things that you can get involved in that you probably wouldn't have thought about 6 months ago.
Absolutely.
So keep the connections going.
Yeah, and also, a big shout out to Paul. You, as far as I know, all of you guys came through LinkedIn, and Paul was he's one of those people that said, during these times, let's make these connections, let's have conversations, let's get interesting people together to discuss potential problems and also solutions. So thanks again, Paul, for that. It's a huge appreciation. It's great to collaborate on these things, and I'd love to collaborate with any of you guys if you want to do these sort of things. This is what I'm here for. And this is what I love. Absolutely. So thank you for that, Paul. Quick shout out to you there, mate.
Thank you very much. Well, thanks for arranging everything, Scotty. Thanks for your team.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think just picking up on what Lisa's saying, absolutely. Yeah, use that hour a day or whatever you've you've saved in traveling to expand your contact base, for example. I think it's an excellent idea.
Keep building those relationships. Fantastic, guys. Anyone else want to chirp in with a quick comment before we finish off?
Oh, that's all.
Happy. Everybody, thank you so much for, thank you so much for joining me, guys. For those listening, I'm Scott Cundill from scottcundill.com. I'd love to have you guys on board. If any of you would like to contact me to put together a discussion, I'm always willing. That's what I do, especially in times like this, because nothing beats a group of fascinating people in a room together. Thank you all for joining me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Good
Thank
stuff,
you.
Scotty. Thank you very much. Take care.